Hello, this is Teachsmith, and I firstly wanted to say thank you so much for the positive feedback for my 10,000 views video, but now of course it's time to get back to some serious analysis and discussion about the poetry. Circle of Poems 2, Inner Conflict. No, but seriously, these are what I would call the power poems, some might call them my identity poems. Feel free to stop this video at some point now and think about why I have matched these poems in this way. So again, in order to help you, I've color coded these overlaps. So firstly, London versus Checking Out My History, one of my most favourite poems or poem comparison pairs. So both are about a lack of individual freedom. In Checking Out My History, the voice of the poem feels like they've been denied individual freedom to explore their identity. In London, you have the mind-forged manacles. People don't seem free. They certainly don't seem free in their own minds. A loss of identity as a result of this lack of freedom. Conforming, being forced to conform to, in Checking Out My History, imperialist history, this colonialist history, and then in London, conforming to the rules of London, the chartered Thames, the chartered streets. But both try to rebel against this. In Checking Out My History, Shaka Zulu talks about Toussaint, talks about Mary C. Cole, talks about Nanny de Maroon. In London, he wanders through the streets. He is aimless, he rebels, even in Blake's own small way. So, going round the circle, Checking Out My History versus Emigree. Both about identity again. Emigree, the tension between culture of the country that the person has fled from and the culture of the country that they have arrived in. And then Checking Out My History, that tension between that culture they felt they have been denied and that imperialist colonialist culture. Losing that identity or trying to find it again. Having a different cultural background than the dominant one. Wanting to know more about your heritage. Demanding to almost, or having a real desire to. In Emigree, being branded by it or feeling like they must seek it out. Checking Out My History, carving it out for themselves. In a more positive sense, I think. Emigree and Kamikaze, again about identity. Very much in Kamikaze, that Japanese identity. And then Emigree, it's not really specified, but again, a different identity to a Western one. Exploring that heritage, the daughter or granddaughter, thinking about the Kamikaze pilot in Japan, and then in Emigree, thinking about where you've come from. The effect of war on ordinary people, how the village turn their back on the soldier, and how the war in whatever country it is that they came from, it sounds like it's Middle Eastern, being driven out because of war. Feeling like an outsider, the Kamikaze pilot is shunned for not completing his mission. In Emigree, they don't feel accepted in the new country. Kamikaze and Prelude keep going around that circle in a clockwise direction. Both about the power of nature, such an important point of comparison in so many of these poems. Kamikaze, what makes him turn back, a big part of what makes him turn back is the power of looking down and seeing the sea, the fish particularly, seeing the beauty of his village and the nature surrounding it, and of course Prelude being seduced by the willow tree, the boat, the water, etc. But also in terms of Prelude, that negative image of the mountain being too powerful for him, and again that internal conflict, the Kamikaze pilot wanting to go on but wanting to turn back, and then the Prelude, nature versus human progress, nature versus industrialization, causing eternal conflict in a person's mind. Again, similar to London. Both about rebelling in a sense. The Kamikaze pilot doesn't follow his orders. In Prelude, he stole the boat. Okay, it's a rebellious act. It starts with a rebellious act. And then they suffer for it. They suffer for their decisions. In Kamikaze, he's shunned. In the Prelude, he has this awful feeling of ennui and depression from all the figures and shapes in his mind. Prelude and Ozymandias, again, nature is so important in these poems. Prelude, the mountain, the figure preventing him, and also nature being quite seductive in the Prelude. Okay, the lusty oars, the elfin pinnace, Ozymandias, the power of nature wearing away, eroding the rock, eroding the statue over time. Both about powerful figures. Okay, what is that peak? Who or what is the peak, black and huge, in the Prelude? Is it nature? Is it an angry husband? Because there's a suggestion that it might be an affair. And then of course the powerful figure is Ozymandias, the incredible pharaoh who lived for such a long time. But nature wins. Okay, Ozymandias thought he could win, but he doesn't. The man on the boat thought he could win, but the peak wins. The peak stops him. He stops the dream, stops him reaching the horizon. The person in the Prelude suffers, and it's suggested out, or it's strongly suggested at, with the sneer of cold command, that the people under the pharaoh Ozymandias, Ramses, suffered. And finally, Ozymandias versus London. Ozymandias versus London, both about the abuse of power. Ozymandias being a powerful figure that abuses his power, and then ordinary people in London feeling powerless. The oppressor and the oppressed. For this last comparison, I just wanted to talk a bit about structure. So you have the sonnet form in Ozymandias, and you have quite a regular rhyme scheme in London as well, but they're playing with it, they're being rebellious with it. Both poets in the Romantic tradition, Shelley I would say more strictly so, Blake is more a kind of godfather of the Romantic tradition, an eccentric figure not quite fitting into the Romantic tradition, but loosely so. So I hope that video has been helpful. Please like and subscribe if it has been. Please check out my other videos, both my how-tos, analysis, revision raps, and I hope this video has been enjoyable and helpful. Thank you very much.